So hello everybody and thanks for coming for this session. My name is Timo Jokela and I'm coming from the University of Lapland. I will introduce my background a little bit later. We have this panelist Rector Gunvor Guttorm from Sami and Professor Mirja Hiltunen from University of Lapland. So in the final end, a couple of quite important person for this panel or session was forced to cancel their coming. Lars Kullerud from the Rector of University of Arctic and Mauri Yläkotola, also the Rector of Lapland University, former Rector of Finnish Fine Art Academy, and also unfortunately Asta Jonsdottir from Iceland. So we decided not to have such kind of discussion because if we are starting to talk together, we are end up to Finnish language with Gunvor. But we have a short presentations first, and then we could have a discussion. And you can all the time interrupt us to have that conversation if you like and if you have something to ask. So I will shortly introduce this kind of idea about what is Arctic education, research and practices in a way that we currently understand that. As I mentioned in the morning session, I'm coming from the northern Finland. Actually, I grown up in the area not far away from Norwegian border, and I'm always joking that Norway is in my backyard. So I have been living and working in this borderless area since my study, from the beginning of my art studies, and that's still the area where I'm working. Actually, in a way that I mentioned the morning about that kind of northern identity, how it's important for me. And when I went to study art in Helsinki in 70s, it was a time of this kind of modernistic thinking, and the landscape and North was very far away of that kind of idea about the good art, valuable art. So I was a little bit out of my idea to be an artist, but then I found a way to the North back through contemporary art, community art, environmental art, and also this kind of meeting, a very important exhibition for me, which was about Japanese aesthetic and art and architecture and its relationship to the nature. And suddenly I learned to see that, okay, I have got some few years studies, education in painting and graphic printing, but I have a long education to use nature materials and look at the nature and follow what we have in our environment. And I started to work as an environmental artist using these materials and things. And I started to use that kind of concept, which is called place-specific art. Earlier, that it was not mentioned, it was more or less like an environmental art. But the idea that in a way to take care of these northern circumstances and conditions and try to find a way that how we can use these traditional working methods, also this kind of indigenous practices as contemporary art. That was my idea. And about the place, it's not only the location or the situation of some artwork, it's also this kind of humanistic aspect. And I started to concentrate on this kind of community participation, how to get people somehow tied in my artistic action and work. And I was loved to this northern narratives and stories, which we have a lot related to our environment. So that was the way that I started to work as an artist. And then developed actually this kind of collaboration methods about the mapping of the place, and that kind of idea I learned when I was collaborating with humanistic geography in Oulu University and this kind of nature sciences way of thinking. And as that suddenly I recognized that this is my way of working in the northern environment. Nowadays I use very often this concept of ecosystem services, which is something that put under the umbrella these things that we get from the nature, like snow, ice, water, northern lights, food, everything. We have in North specialists to harvest these things. But it's also an aesthetic phenomenon, well-being, health, and like that. But it's not only this kind of nature-related things, it's also nature-related stories, like memories, like place names. And I have always been fascinated about the Scandinavia, where we learn what are these Sami names behind this landscape, because they are always stories. They are some kind of narratives to learn about the Arctic. And I started to work with this snow and ice things that's done in Kirkenes, place-specific thing. And you know, all you are living in Scandinavia, that is big business now. But in the beginning it wasn't. It was more or less like fun and testing how we can use this kind of ecosystem services with circulating in our nature. Okay, but in the same time, my idea to the artist was also to learn about this culture. And when I was working with this indigenous people, mainly Sami people in the beginning, and later also in other indigenous group, I learned about that concept of decolonialization. And I suddenly understood that this kind of place-specific art, this community-based art, this ecosystem services has been something which means a lot for the local people, and it works that kind of decolonialization. But in the same time, I was already became to be a professor in Lapland University, and we started to work in very close collaboration with this Arctic or the northern countries, northern part of Nordic countries and Russia since 90s. Nowadays, this is a tragedy of University of Arctic. Research on science in the Arctic and the North. And it's divided in 4 sections: sustainable development, social justice, northern well-being, education and changing work, cultural-centered service design and responsibility tourism. And we are in the Faculty of Art and Design educating designers and artists under that strategy. What does it mean? It means that it gives us a direction, go out from this kind of art institution to teach our students to collaborate, not together, not inside the art, but with the art and science. Lapland University profile itself as a science and art university, and I think it's a good sign. It's a good sign for the future. Art and science are both ways to learn and understand our environment and our culture and make it better. So about that art, I mentioned that we have as a kind of aim to educate new type of artists. We started that program, art, culture, art community and environmental studies as a minor subject. But nowadays we have this kind of international program, as we call it, Arctic Art and Design Master. And what we did here is something that we put together this kind of participatory design methods and this kind of applied visual art, as we call it. And the central role here is participation. We put these students out from the university to the Arctic, even if they are coming from the big cities from the China, to learn what the Arctic means, what is the situation here. So it's that kind of working orientated master program that every student has that kind of placement or project going on with some companies or some other systems in the north. Added with the cultural studies from Arctic Center. this is what we are doing now. But the other thing is that the perspective for these educational practices in the Arctic is coming from the collaboration under the University of Arctic umbrella. It was actually 2010. I was invited to run a workshop in UNESCO roadmap work for education, art education in Seoul. And there was a lot of people talking about the different situation around the world, but any voice from the Arctic or the North. And I suddenly recognized that we should build such kind of international university network where we can concentrate on these issues we share here in the North. So a year later we were coming from the Yakuts, very inspired with Mirja, inspired about you must know, remember the official name of the Yakuts.
Cultural center, you mean?
No, this cultural, and this is very special.
University.
It's a university, not Yakuts University.
No,
it's
no,
the Art
it's
and Culture Institution for
Yeah.
Art and Culture in Sakha.
Yeah.
Yeah, inspired about the way that how they understood this kind of role of indigenous art or their own art there in their education. And in the Moscow airport, we brought a proposal to have that network. And in this moment, this network is something that gives us a little bit about the visibility. What is really happening in art education and educating artists in the North? We have now actually 26, one is missing from the list. I don't remember what is missing, but some is missing. 26 universities including in this network. So there are some from Finland, some from Iceland, Russian ones, also for the remote area, Scotland Islands, Shetland, University of Highland and Island, Canada universities who are working in these things related to the Arctic, and Alaska and Norway partners. What we do here, we have this kind of thematic network which is concentrated very much on this kind of sustainability, ecological, economic, educational, social, cultural sustainability way of thinking, following this kind of UNESCO idea about that. But its idea is to share our good practices and knowledge, how our studies, research, is related to each university circumstances in the Arctic. How we really collaborate, not so much together, but also in our environments and surroundings. So we have this kind of annual meetings each year and exhibitions. They have been in Finland, Iceland, Norway, Alaska, last in Shetland, and next one is going to be in Rovaniemi again, and then somewhere, hopefully in Sweden. We have had to partner exhibitions, like for example, Yakuts exhibition in Arctic Center in Rovaniemi. We have had a lot of this kind of collaboration, contemporary art, place-specific, community-based activities, workshops and courses. For example, with Sami University College, Iceland, University of Nord, and we have had some first step also in this kind of joint programs that 4th of July the first this joint doctor degree, Asta Josdottir is going to defend her dissertation in Iceland. And we are planning this kind of applied visual art master program in the field of that, so that hopefully could collaborate and share our knowledges in that way. So we have publication, annual publication, and this kind of research joint research program. For example, with the Canadian universities, we have now question about what is this art-based research in this field. But to summarize that, what we have here in this moment, we have actually this kind of 3 types of universities in this group. We have quite many of this kind of typical Western type of art academies or the art universities, which are still very much independent. They could be a part of some bigger university, but still share the area that art is independent about the science. So they are educating artists, and then they are educating artists for the art institution. This art institution orientated art teaching. There is a lot of this kind of discussion about the artistic research, which is individual. It's an individual understanding and individual expression, individual way of thinking, even this kind of auto-ethnography way of thinking about me as an artist. But there is people who are interested about the art, but not so much in the whole institutional level, but professor and teacher who are interested about the art. Then we have like Gunvor's institution and that Saha Jakut's institution, which are indigenous art universities, which are very much concentrated about this indigenous art and the indigenous knowledge system orientated for this and the heritage way of thinking. And they are normally arts, that it's not only visual art, like these universities. But then we have like Lapland University, which in Lapland universities, this 1,000 students faculty of art and design is a part of university, and it's almost forced to collaborate with other social sciences and Arctic research, of course education, but also law and of course tourism research. So it's more this kind of other way around. It's a problem-based orientation. So we should work, and we like to work with these issues which is coming from Arctics, not from our head, our own expression, but these problems which we recognize following this investment and research related to the artists, and trying to find the solutions. And I think that this is a big difference. Because here in this type of the universities, it's very often highlighted in a way that art is something that make invisible visible. It's a critical thinking to show people new way of seeing things and leave it like that. But when we put these things together, we are asking that can we also promote solutions for these problems. So it's a step from the fine art to the design way of thinking. So it means collaboration, integration, this kind of applied art, as we call it, visual applied art. And it's very often about this practice-based, and as we call it, art-based research. It's different with this Arctic research. It's a research that how we develop things with art, using art, not developing our own artistic expression. It could be a part of that. And finally, these artists end up to the similar situations, exhibitions, but they are those artists who are learned to communicate better with the Arctic issues. I at least believe that. Okay, but then I can give a floor to Gunvor Guttorm, who is now telling deeply about that, how you are thinking about that Arctic art in Kautokeino University.
Hello, I
Sami
start with, you said that I'm rector at the Sami University of Applied Sciences, and that's true, but I have also another position, and that is that I'm a professor in Vuochi, which is Sami Arts and Crafts. So I think that that's why I'm actually I am here for the moment, because I'm also part of this. You don't need to put it on.
I need to put my away.
What is your
No, I don't need to put it on yet.
Aha, okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Sorry.
Because we haven't so much time, I see. Indigenous art education, what is it? As Timo said, for years indigenous people around the world have argued that self-determination indicates education on all levels and subjects of the educational system. And in the universities and higher education, indigenous knowledge has seldom been visible. And artistic expressions of indigenous people have very rarely been part of the art studies, as Timo also said here. So many indigenous peoples have attempted in their regions to create art programs for higher education, often as part of the existing programs or as independent programs. And I think that what Timo presented here is that you have part of existing art programs, and I will present an independent program of indigenous art education. So I will talk a little bit about, I will of course stress on Duotji, which is the Sami name of not only art but arts and crafts, and how the Sami University of Applied Sciences has developed and Duotji education and research in Duotji. And then how it has been possible to attend this Assad network also afterwards. So Duotji, if you see in the traditional Sami society, Duotji was it was made for survival. You made Duotji for survival. Duotji was the products people needed for their everyday life. The Sami language had not a specific word for art for a long time. We got a name for art in 1970s. Duotji is the Sami word for a product. It can be a handmade product, but also a piece of art, if you just use the word Duotji. And for many, Duotji is a lifestyle and livelihood. But nowadays, Duotji is a subject in the educational system, and this means that you have to extend the meaning of Duotji. And why do we want to have a specific art education that consider the indigenous knowledge? It is, of course, epistemological value of indigenous knowledge. Indigenous experiences and practices will be valued, and of course it's self-determination, as you also mentioned, and then you also have a transformation of indigenous knowledge to higher educational systems, because you can't just copy something that exists in the society, but you have to transform something. And of course you also have to be critical to the mainstream education. And because of the colonization, you also try to correct the situation for the indigenous people. And of course, when you take the Duotji as a starting point to the art education, you have also made a choice of what you stress on. Oh, and of course it is also a recognition of all kind of stories. So the Sami University was established in 1989, and the university got very early responsibility to provide higher education in especially Sami art, or Duotji. And Duotji was also one of the first courses at the university. But still it took many years before we could talk about independent Duotji programs. And why? Now I could actually show you. It's here.
Yeah.
Show you. Let's see. This one. If you see the story of Sami University or Sami Alvaskola, we started in '89 to build up something. Very much of the education was that we translated from Norwegian to Sami. But then, after about 10 years, we started to try to find the Sami content of also the art education and also all the other educations. And the last 10 years we have been more working with also awareness of the indigenous communities and talking about the indigenous knowledges. In '86, from this part, the Nordic Sami Institute started in collaboration with the Oslo University of Oslo College, a master's program in Duotji. A separate curriculum was made. Practically, students followed the master program in Oslo. The lecturers knew very little about Duotji. So this is just you could say this was just a translation of a program that existed in Oslo, and I was part of that program. But in 2001, the Master of Duotji was moved from Oslo to Kautokeino, to Sami University, and from that day on, we could have a Sami perspective on the curriculum, and it was also hard to see how we could use the Sami knowledge in the program. And the program has very much of a practical part and, of course, a theoretical part approach. So you can say, as you also have, that you are working with science and art. You can also say that we have these two parts, that we work with very practically with Duotji, but also have this theoretical or scientific approach to Duotji. But of course, the research in Duotji is built on Sami experience, perspectives, and practices. And this wouldn't be possible if we hadn't trusted on our own experiences and also trusted on our own knowledge systems, the Sami knowledge systems. It wouldn't be possible to develop anything. So the goal to reach this has been to find the Sami voice. From there, it has been possible also to open up and get partners, different networks and partners. But you had to have this, you had to go through all these stages to get this self-esteem, but also to be how can you say, not a free, but I lost the word, never mind. But to be peers instead of being part of a cultural appropriation. That is perhaps the most important goal of this. And from here it was very easy to start all these processes with going to start a collaboration with the University of Lapland and also University of all the other universities that was listed here in this Assad program. So since perhaps I have some minutes to go. No,
Yes.
10 minutes left.
Yeah,
Or
you
On a
have.
strict schedule today.
pardon?
The schedule is quite strict today.
Yes,
so I have
okay.
to stop you at
But please, because
Yeah.
Timo already had quite a lot of information about the University of Lapland, I can do very short
Yeah.
presentation.
Let's just see some here. Here we have some pictures of how we can actually collaborate. This was part of our collaboration. And this is something that we also work with other indigenous artists. Here you see Sonia Kelleher Combs, who is here now, and she is working with these skins, and her work is called Small Secrets. And one of our students were actually studying her work, and made her own, which is called Papmu, and she relates her work to what happened in Lule-Sami area, where you have had a lot of sexual rapes and that kind of traumas. So she was working with that trauma through her artwork. And that is also this is also a part of the healing processes that indigenous people sometimes have to go through. And here you can see that sometimes we start from the heritage, from the history, and end up with totally another area, modern design. Here is this. Here is same. Here is this was of Ingeberit Fernmugö. She is bachelor student or was bachelor student. Here is Elle Valkiabä. She was exchange student from your university, and she was working with her story about her grandmother. Started to study this hat and ended up with story about her heritage on her mother's or father's side. And sustainable arts that we are working very close together with the University of Lapland. Here is part of those projects, Inga Elise Pove Idivona. I think I end up there. We can continue.
Okay, good morning everyone. My name is Mirja Hiltunen, and I'm really glad to have this opportunity to share some experiences from our collaborative project in northern Finland mainly, but also other countries. So I'm focusing to some examples and experiences from participatory art project and multidisciplinary research collaboration, and in the end, if I have time, I will conclude to raise up some or open some questions about action-based art-based action research in these projects. But yes, maybe let me first introduce myself shortly. So here you can see campuses of my life, and I'm actually pointing out that you can definitely see the campuses of my life, because the most important campuses of my life has been my own field praxis in the north. So I'm acting kind of like a community artist myself, and my research is based on those projects. So for instance, Utsjoki, which is the main research area I have been dealing with, is a very important campus for me. And here I am standing on the backyard of University of Lapland, and also living close to nature, and for instance ice fishing, which is so important hobby of mine. So these things are somehow building me as I am at the moment. Not only this kind of, the background I have at the universities and so on. And as Timo already told, we are very much collaborating with the University of Arctic and ASAC network, and I'm also leader of the NASER team. It's a research group. So, yes, Faculty of Art and Design, it organizes annual art-based development project in northern areas, both domestically and internationally. The participants in this multidisciplinary project include the faculty staff, students from different educational programs, as well as local residents, businesses and organizations. Applied Visual Art and Art Education project are aiming to offer opportunity of increased participation in learning in the field of education and culture in rural areas. So we are fostering critical thinking and providing professional identities for the future artists and art educators, and at the same time we are expanding the domain of art and culture into different sectors of society. First I will give you some practical examples of our projects. This is one of the most recent ones, and it is called Art Care and conducted in collaboration between Faculty of Art and Design and Social Work, and also in collaboration with local Artist Association of Lapland and Cross Art Collective Piste. The aim of this project is to promote dialogue and open a space for different voices to share and reflect through art-based modes. And the art workshops are designed to support immigrants who have arrived in Finland as asylum seekers and receive residency permits. And because we are so few in Finnish Lapland, and you all know the huge amount of refugees who have came into Finnish Lapland since 2015, as art educators and artists, we think that we need to do something to deal with these issues as well. It's a question about the mega trends also in the Arctic, the urbanization, etc. So here you can see an example of that project. It's a street art happening, and it was actually happening only 2 weeks ago in Rovaniemi, very recent project. Another example from a couple of years ago, we were working in Syttyy Karkomi Republic with our art students, and in that project we were tracing our Finno-Ugric traces and tried to find what is connecting us, not what is the differences between our cultures. So here one example from Utsjoki, which I already told you, which is my maybe dearest research area in Finnish Lapland, and here we are working with the local schools, Finnish and Sami schools, and we were celebrating almost total solar eclipse on March 2015. It was 92% solar eclipse. Some pictures from the activities, working with all schools and kindergartens, order with the elderly. And then we also worked with the local astronomical association URSA, had also scientific lectures and panels. And in the evening we celebrated the event doing fire sculptures with the youngsters. And the 3-day event ended up to an ice fishing competition in a remote fell lake called Kuoppilas. Okay, so the collaboration, it is the integral part of this project, and it can be seen as an exercise in relational aesthetics, where the work is defined not only by material, but by unique relationship produced as a direct result of the project. And to elaborate these projects, we have developed this art-based action research approach. And all students in their master levels, they are taking part in these project studies, and they have possibility learn how to say in real life situation during their studies. And activistic art is considered as a potential agent of fostering, sustaining, developing and regenerating communities in remote northern areas. So, as we have heard many times during this symposium, art is a powerful tool. And if we combine it to education, I think that we are really somehow creating the future. And when we add in that same packet also research and have this critical thinking included and reflective processes included, I think that this is even more powerful to put these 3 elements together. And I think that we are not time to go to the findings, but maybe I can leave this behind and give floor to the audience and maybe raise up some questions. But yeah, the role of contemporary art is so important, so I just wanted to leave it here, even though I think we need to...
Yeah, it's time now.
Do we have time for any questions or conversation? Just a bit.
Yes. One question.
One
perhaps.
question.
Or two. One or two.
I thought that we have time until 11, so sorry.
No, what did you?
Yeah. Oh, okay, this was missing information then. Okay.
So any questions? Or
Yeah, there's a lot of questions, but if we don't have time, we don't start that discussion. But the one thing is that I like to ask both Mirja and Gunvor is about that kind of how do you see that that support or the financing for your institution or your aims as a research? Have you that kind of research support for development, your way of working?
Of course, those who are professors or associate professors, you have some time that you can use, some percents of your time to use to research. But otherwise, we have the Norwegian Research Council that also supports artistic work now. So, but we haven't attended for it, but it is possible.
Because I was asking that because I feel that it's somehow difficult situation. We are in the field of academic. We are combining about the research money.
Yes.
We don't get it because we are artists.
yeah.
And if we are applying money for the art, we don't get it because we are researchers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's quite difficult.
Really
but it was eye-opening for me. A couple of weeks ago, you were also in this ASAC conference in Umeå,
Yes.
where there is an evaluation about that kind of funding for this Arctic. So it was such kind of huge database about the research. And the 1% of that research is going to the field of research on Arctic issues. 1%. And then where it goes? it goes to the nature sciences. 90% is going to the nature sciences. Rest is divided. Medicine, healthcare, like that. And almost this kind of 2%, 3% of that is going to the social sciences, which is a huge area, and humanities. And art is a part of that. So it's 1%, cut it 1% that, and then maybe less than 1% of that 1% is the financing for art research and development.
Yeah, and if I'm thinking as a professor of art education, we are really on a marching, you know, because there is a combination between education and artistic ideas and science and all these things, and it's really hard to find a funding for these kind of research projects.
Yeah, or somebody else.
We have to stop.
We have to stop.
Yeah, but we can discuss unofficially.
Yeah.
But maybe